Hey besties, mistakes were made. I am all over the place today. Hi, how's it going? 8 people in the chat. What's up? Everybody's here on time. That must mean y'all really need to know what I have to say today. And we have a lot. I have a lot to say today. It's gonna be mostly dates because there's a lot happening all at once. And I'll be honest, it snuck up on me too. But if you're new here, oh my gosh, if you're new here, hi. My name is Winter. I am Mix Mercury, the Astro Himbo, and this is my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, you should subscribe. Turn your notifications on so you can be notified whenever I go live. And if you haven't already, please like the video in advance because, like I said, we got lots to talk about. So, hey Deb, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Y'all can hear me, right? Hold on, let me make sure I have the right mic. Oh, I knew it. Okay, that should be better. Period. All right. So I'm gonna get right into it since y'all are here. In a matter of hours, Venus is going to move into Pisces. And this sets off a chain of events that we will be in until like May 31st. So basically June. um so we are here. We have arrived in one of the biggest periods of time in the astrology this year. So, hi Heart, good afternoon. Hey Sherry, good evening to you all the way out in South Africa. Yes, new moon on Wednesday. I will also try to talk about that. I have very little notes on it because I was so caught up in the Pisces of it all, but yes. Hey Karen, and happy belated birthday to you. What's up, King Temperance? You're hello. Oh my gosh, yes, all the homies are here. So, um, yeah, so last week, if you tuned in, I talked for 2 hours about Pisces, the sign Pisces, Sidereal Pisces, and Sidereal Gemini and their relationships with each other. Because last week, Mars re entered Gemini on Inauguration Day. And as you can see, it has been hell ever since. Everybody has something to say about everything. The discourse wars have begun again. And also, Donald Trump himself saying and doing a lot of things right off the bat in this first week in office. There's so much happening right now. And I think like the main thing that just keeps coming back to me about all of this Pisces stuff is that everything is not exactly as it seems. Like it's just not. And that goes both ways. It goes in the sense that some things are not necessarily as bad as they seem up front, and then some things are actually as bad as you think they are, but maybe being downplayed in certain ways. So there's just a lot of confusion in that sense. Like, so whenever I say everybody got something to say, and then that whole thing we said last week about sometimes it's just fuck what you heard. This is what it is. This is what it looks like. These are the times that we're in. And I made a TikTok before inauguration when the whole TikTok ban situation was happening. And I was saying, hey, don't run away with the first little bit of information that you hear, and don't like catastrophize or make like, I don't know, doom and gloom stories out of the first little information or action that man takes that you hear about, because it appears one way on the surface and very much means something else otherwise. It doesn't mean that there aren't things to be upset about or to be mad about. It just means that you may not even be mad about what you think you should be mad about, or like just the way that these things are being described and played off right off the bat are meant to confuse you. I haven't read it myself, but I'm gonna try to find it. There's a book called Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. Um, And I did read a book by her called Doppelganger, which was really good. So I'm thinking Shock Doctrine is really good. And if I understand, if my context clues serve me correctly, Shock Doctrine is very much about what's happening in this way that they pass a whole bunch of legislation and take all of these really rambunctious actions at the start of the administration so that everybody is like kind of thrown into a tizzy, and it puts everyone in this state of like paralysis or confusion or just discombobulation in general, so that you're kind of subdued in a way while they do worse shit. So if I'm understanding and interpreting her book correctly, like I said, I'm going to look into it. If you want to look into it, do so as well. I've heard it's been recommended by a lot of people. But this is what I'm thinking about, this idea of let's just do a bunch of stuff at once and be really confusing about it or really vague about it, or be really explicit about it and have everyone else be very vague or confused about it. And it will lead to this experience of like emotional manipulation. So I'm going to put an asterisk whenever I say this, but um I think a lot of this Venus retrograde in particular, because it's the longest Pisces transit other than Saturn and Pisces, which will start later, end of March. But I think in the meantime, a lot of this Venus and Pisces transit is emotional manipulation and gaslighting. And so it is our job, my advice for this transit is for us to, again, not run away and speculate and tell stories on every little action that man takes. And actually, there was a post someone said on Blue Sky that I want to reference because I thought it was a really good description of how to kind of respond to all of this while Mercury is in Capricorn. And it says, hold on, I gotta find it. Oh, where is it? There it is. Okay. So it was from Miss Bundridge on Blue Sky. She said, deciding not to ingest news on a loop or reacting to every soundbite out of the mouth of some pontificator isn't the same thing as being ignorant to what's going on around you. Those choosing peace are curating a minimum necessary knowledge experience. Being incessantly gaslit isn't education, it's trauma. And I was like, oh, that's bars. That's bars for specifically Mercury and Capricorn, which I think I talked about in the last live. Mercury and Capricorn being relevant to all of this because Mercury and Capricorn is responsible for Mars and Gemini. So Mercury as a cardinal sign, and this I think kind of related to the new moon coming up on Wednesday. So I'll start with that. The new moon coming up on Wednesday is in Capricorn with Mercury, with the sun, and with the moon, basically. So that day in particular will be a cardinal ruled sky, or at least like mostly cardinal, but very much a Saturn ruled sky. It'll be 4 planets in Saturn ruled signs if you count Saturn in Aquarius. So just to be prepared, tomorrow, Wednesday, some of Thursday, while this is happening, probably not going to be a very good feeling day. Cardinal signs, which Capricorn is, and especially Earth cardinal, very much about control, control over resources, um, control over like how much you do and don't have of something, managing your resources, managing people and other people's emotions, uh, trying to regulate your own emotions by, yes, being like tapped in and aware of what's going on, but not like overly aware, overly consumed, overly involved. Like there's a boundary between you and the information that you're seeing that's flying around everywhere. There's a boundary between you and other people's emotions. There's a boundary between you and your own emotions that says, okay, I'm going to acknowledge the situation at hand in a realistic way, but I'm not going to just totally spin out and spill all over myself over it. Like I have to kind of contain myself. I have to not spend all of my money, like impulsively spend all of my money on treats and, pleasurable things. I have to conserve. I have to ration. I have to I don't know. I have to slow down a little bit and be aware of my own limits, whether those are physical and emotional limits or material limits. That's all Capricorn stuff. So this new moon coming up right after more announcements of tariffs going into place. I believe so far we have tariffs on Canada, Mexico, Colombia is the newest one, and there may be another tariff that I'm missing somewhere else, maybe China. And I was thinking about this, like the whole tariff thing. What did I write down? The tariffs and the tariff wars. This is very much like Capricorn shit because we end up being the people who pay the extra fees or the extra tax up front. Very confusing legislation type stuff. But basically we end up being the people who everything gets more expensive for. So we can't just spend recklessly. We haven't been spending recklessly. We're effectively in a recession as far as we know, dealing with a lot of inflation and corporate greed. But we've also seen with the deportation, mass deportation. No, not that. Didn't want to talk about that yet. Rewind. Excuse me. God, what am I trying to say? We were talking about tariffs. We were talking about things getting more expensive for us, shortages. Um, what was I just about to say? I lost it. Shortages. I don't know. Basically, everything getting more expensive means we have to spend less. Oh yes, boycotts. That's what I was going to say. They ended DEI initiatives federally, and so corporations don't necessarily have to stop being diverse, but a lot of them are willingly deciding to now that they aren't now that they don't have to do it, they're doing it anyway because that's what they believe in, and that's what they was going to do anyway if it wasn't mandated. So they are Target. A lot of people are boycotting Target, right? Being mindful of the places where we consume. Mars is not in Cancer anymore until a few more weeks from now. So a lot of the reckless spending and the reckless indulgence and the impulsive decisions that we've been making and all that type of stuff, we are not doing that anymore. And especially while Mercury is in Capricorn in charge of Mars and Gemini, we are like I said, taking in information about which actions to take next and kind of learning about just what all of this new legislation is and how it's impacting us, and also learning what we can and can't control in terms of that information that's coming in. Like, what can we actually do? What should we do? What shouldn't we do? And how does all of this mostly help us preserve ourselves, our own lives, and our own bodies, and our own minds and sanity? It's very easy to get carried away in all of the nonsense, especially because, like I said, every day he's trying something new, doing something new that more or less said that he was going to do, or at the very least, like, we kind of knew it was coming. So while this is also happening, and I would say a lot of what I'm talking about for this first part of, I guess, Venus in Pisces, this first like half of the month and leading up to the full moon in Cancer later this month, is all kind of related to the new moon. The new moon, again, being in Capricorn, having to do with just having less, um, being denied, being repressed, being ignorant, to, in the sense that, like, we may not know all that's going on or be totally clued into everything that's going on, partially because some of that information is intentionally being omitted or left out. So there's that aspect of it as well. But for the most part, there's just a lot of withholding going on right now in a lot of ways. And that's especially, because there's also Jupiter in Taurus right now, which is in an earth sign, and earth signs in general have to do with having something withheld from you for one reason or another. So this is all kind of new moon territory. Sidereally, no, we didn't have a full moon in Cancer just yet. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that's coming up next. We just had our last full moon was in Gemini. Yeah, so no, we haven't had the full moon in Cancer just yet. That one's up next. Full moon in Cancer will be on February 12th at 29 degrees Cancer, so right on the edge. So yeah, if I can think of more things to say about the new moon in Capricorn, I will. But like I said, mostly what I want to talk about is eclipse season. And I want to weave politics into it too, but I don't know. There's so much, guys. Like, it's so much to keep up with. It's like too much. I actually prefer Mars in Cancer. I think I would like to go back to that. I fear I'm going to regret saying that whenever Mars does actually go back into Cancer after all of this, but alas, we have to go through the shock doctrine first. So there's that. Okay, let me see what y'all are saying in the chat. Now I understand why my Gemini Mars be whooping my ass. Yeah, lots of going on. This is what Bannon's been planning. I assume that's in response to this shock doctrine. So yes. My life is the same as when Mars was in Gemini the last time, and by that I mean my life is in shambles. I'm so sorry to hear that. And honestly, yeah, it's transiting my first house in my ascendant currently, and it doesn't feel very good. There's a weird health issue that I was dealing with that I couldn't understand when Jupiter was in Pisces that I feel is already coming back, that I still don't know what it is. So trying to deal with that on the side as well. It's not fun, but hopefully there's a resolution on the other side of this somewhere. So, okay. Next thing. Okay, let's get into this Venus retrograde, this eclipse season, this just everything happening in Pisces business. So I'm going to give y'all some dates first to kind of set the stage, because I realized over the weekend this Pisces shit is maybe bigger than we once thought. I want to do more research about it, and maybe I'll talk about it next week, or I'll do another live or post about it somewhere. But I realized that we have had somewhat unrelenting Pisces transits, significant Pisces transits since 2019. So I'll list off some dates for that. This is mostly just for y'all to have to reflect on. I don't have anything significant to say about them right now.
other than a couple of things here and there. So the first one is February 24th, 2019 would have been at the beginning of a Mercury retrograde in Pisces that lasted through May 3rd, 2019. I won't get into the details of that, but February 24th through May 3rd, 2019 was a Mercury retrograde in Pisces. And then June 18th, 2020 through December 20th, 2020, or I think it was the end of December 2020, Mars did a retrograde in Pisces between Aries and Pisces. So I don't know if you remember that one. That one in particular, I do actually remember, because that was COVID stuff. It was lockdowns starting to kind of cease. The Delta wave was part of that. Mask mandates being lifted or banned in certain states was during that time. The gaslighting around the numbers being recorded or not being recorded a certain way. There was also the election, the 2020 election. So if there are any dates that I would really reflect on, it's that one, June 18th through December, I think 31st, 2020. Mars retrograde between Aries and Pisces, mostly in Pisces. And then another big date was April 13th, 2022 through April 22nd, 2023 was Jupiter in Pisces. And that's the most Pisces that you can get, is Jupiter itself being in its own sign in Pisces for an entire year. So reflect on what 2022 to 2023 was like for you, April to April. And then finally, we had the lunar nodes, which give us the eclipses. That's been between November 29th, 2023, and will last through May 30th of 2025 this year, whenever the nodes will fully switch over into Aquarius and Leo. So 2021 was arguably the only year that we didn't have a whole lot of Pisces stuff going on. And even then, I think we still had Mars transiting through Pisces. So nonstop Pisces transits in a big way since 2019. And I'm willing to bet, if I go through and do the research, that there's some connections between all of the politics. Something I'm curious about that I can't confirm or deny that this is true, but some things that I'm curious about politically are what the Heritage Foundation was up to. And if you don't know, the Heritage Foundation is the group that's responsible for Project 2025. So as much as Project 2025 seems like a Trump thing, it's really not. Trump is like the face of it, or the figurehead of it all, the puppet of it all, a guy who's bold enough to actually go through with it. But the Heritage Foundation are the people who actually drafted Project 2025, and they've been around for decades. So they're not anybody new. So I'd be willing to bet something that the Heritage Foundation was up to happened during that time. Something else during one of those transits was the Great Barrington Declaration. The Great Barrington Declaration for sure was the end of 2020, I believe October 2020. So Mars probably was back in Pisces by then. And the Great Barrington Declaration was written by Jay Bhattacharya and a couple of other people who were basically like, I know it was a libertarian funded document or declaration or whatever, but a lot of the doctors involved drafting it were like also like economists kind of, or something like that. I could be wrong, but basically, or they might have been libertarian doctors, something like that. Anyway, Great Barrington Declaration I've talked about before was a lot of what kind of ended up being our vax and relax, or just like let it rip strategy for COVID, was Great Barrington Declaration. And a lot of the people who drafted that declaration at the time are now in office in some way or another, working in the Trump administration, or at least are nominated to work in the Trump administration. Not exactly sure where they're at on that process now, but people like Jay Bhattacharya, like I said, I think RFK Jr. also kind of taking part in that. But the strategy of the Great Barrington Declaration, they cloaked it in saying that they wanted children back in schools, basically. And they said that anyone who isn't a vulnerable population should just catch COVID, because they're more likely to recover from it and it not be that big of a deal. And then we would then reach herd immunity a lot faster by just letting healthy people get infected with COVID than we would, because this was pre-vaccines, we would achieve herd immunity faster by letting everyone catch COVID and protecting vulnerable groups. But the reality was, them protecting vulnerable groups, they never actually had a strategy for doing that. They just wanted everyone to go back to work and back into the office. And it was basically more ideal for keeping the economy running than it was for actually keeping people safe. They based a lot of that off of stuff that was happening in Sweden and other places in the European Union. But ultimately, that was wrong. Like, the information was wrong. And Sweden actually did like implement restrictions and lockdowns and stuff like that too. They just aren't talked about very much. So anyway, Heritage Foundation, Great Barrington Declaration. I'm sure there are some other things going on behind the scenes during those times that we were unaware of. The Democrats' role in all of this probably wrapped up in that as well. Maybe, maybe not. But the idea between all this Pisces stuff is that they're saying one thing over here, what's happening behind the scenes that we aren't privy to, the information that's being intentionally omitted from all of these policies, decisions, and like, how could we let this happen? How did we get here? Like, I'm sure there's a paper trail somewhere. So keeping that in mind. Another thing that just happened on this kind of topic of health and healthcare, something that Trump just did was rolling back all health initiatives, basically, health communications, federal health communications. All federal health communications have been halted. That's like the CDC, the NIH, the MMWR, which is the morbidity weekly report or something like that, basically telling us like who's dying of what diseases and keeping track of that. They shut all of those things. Well, they didn't shut them down. They have them on pause, which to some extent is something that happens every transfer of power. But some of the things that he's paused, like the CDC and the NIH, and then also I think terminating a lot of like research being done. A lot of that stuff has happened as well, which to me is a bird flu red flag. Unfortunately, I've been kind of a tangent, but I've been trying to nail down whether bird flu human to human transmission will be a Pisces transit thing or a cardinal transit thing, but it's looking like a Pisces thing. Will it go human to human? I don't know. I just want to say that I don't know. I hope it doesn't. It's possible. Humans are already catching it, but more than anything, we know that this is directly affecting workers. Mostly, it's a workers' rights issue as far as people who work in like poultry and dairy, mostly. So the more people catch it, because they're rolling back all these other health protections, because we just withdrew from the WHO, because Trump and all of the people who were in office, RFK Jr. and Jay Bhattacharya, all these other people want us to basically be blind to any other health issues that could be coming up, any other pandemics, anything like that, vaccine mandates and all that kind of stuff. Makes me think that opens up the opportunity for bird flu to be an issue as far as human to human transmission. So keep wanting to say transition. We're gonna all transition into birds, guys. So I'm keeping my eye on that, especially since those health initiatives just got rolled back during this time. Again, that seems like more of a Capricorn thing, Capricorn new moon thing, since that's withdrawing like funding and stuff like that from those institutions. But the transits happening before they happen kind of thing with just not having tracking on bird flu. This is basically tied to the Mars retrograde stuff, where we didn't track pandemic cases as much, and all of the conspiracy around like hospitals marking deaths as with COVID versus of COVID, and all of that terminology kind of switch up, weaponizing of language, and stuff like that. So a lot of these things. Oh, and the other thing being Trump in his first term, getting rid of the pandemic team as well. I would be curious what the dates for that were too, because that was part of the reason why we didn't really have a plan. We didn't have PPE. We didn't have all of these things prepared by the time that COVID reached the US in 2020. So all of that stuff, I'm fairly sure has got to be related. If it's not mutable, then it's cardinal, but I'd be curious to look into that and recommend you all do the same. Okay, let me pause and see what y'all are saying in the chat. Hi April, good morning. All the lies from that time. Yeah, seriously. And I'm sure there's even more lies than like what I'm even thinking of, but I with water transits, those with water mutable stuff and Jupiter stuff, especially those tend to be pandemic related, at least in this last 5-6 years. So that's kind of where my mind is at, but I'm sure there's so much more gaslighting interwoven in that, because we also had BLM movements. We also had the anti-racist movements going on, along with Palestine movements and everything else. As far as identity stuff goes too, so there's a lot of overlaps. So many anti-vaxxers and anti-medication people spreading lies while bird flu rampages. Yes, Sweden backtracked real fast. They did, because their population was succumbing to COVID left and right. Like, people love to say, well, Sweden didn't lock down. Bitch, yes, they did eventually when they were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't play with COVID. They repeatedly lied about not implementing Project 25. Yeah, Trump did. I think I have an opinion. So I personally don't trust the Democrats as far as you can throw them. I think they're doing weaponized incompetence. And a lot of people already say they do controlled opposition, which I think is obvious at this point. But to me, the seeds or the pieces being in place for Project 2025 have been in the works for however long the Heritage Foundation has been moving those chess pieces around, right? And so if I'm not entirely sure if this is a group that's like lobbying for things, or like just how, like, what their proximity is to the federal government, but I would imagine it's one of those situations where, like, just like APAC and just like all of these other corporate interest groups and all these other people who lobby, I would imagine they're kind of involved with the government in that way through the Republicans. And so and these are all just my speculations, by the way, so I could be wrong, but I'm thinking that there's a few people on the right and the left who are probably on board with fascism, right? Or just regaining control of the population. Otherwise, the Democrats wouldn't have behaved how they behaved during the pandemic, where they just totally said, K-Vax, relax, roll back all precautions and all of the other terrible things that Biden did. So I'm thinking that they are in on some of the Democrats, at least, are in on whatever this master plan is, which is basically the rich getting richer and more control over workers and migrants. But the Democrats being like these helpless little babies who can't do anything because, I don't know, it's just too hard. It's too hard to fight the Republicans. They're just so, they just do whatever they want, and it's not even legal. And it's like, y'all could have arrested that man. I'm sure there could have been a way. Y'all could have done something. If this man, like, to me personally, if democracy in their eyes was really under threat and Trump really was as dangerous as they say he is and all of this other stuff, then they would have done something to stop him from getting reelected. No? Like, they're the government. They're the people with the power. Joe Biden had plenty of power as president. Whoever else was in Congress before Congress turned totally red, all the times that we had Democrat packed Congress and courts and this and that, like, somebody could have done something, or at the very least could have codified so many of these laws that have been overturned in the Constitution, but they just didn't. Because why? Because why? It's not that they didn't think it was important. You can't tell me that, because they run on these same issues every single year that we have elections. They run on these issues. So it's not like they don't think that they're important, but they just don't do it. And then some time passes, everybody forgets about it. Republicans do some fuck shit, and then Democrats are like, oh no, the Republicans, vote for me because I'm not a Republican. It's like, are y'all gonna do anything? So the Democrats are not going to save us. I have no faith in them. And in fact, like, the other thing I was thinking about with this was like, It's possible, and I might roll this back, I don't know, but I was thinking again this morning about how, we in the sidereal side of things have kind of framed Taurus as the status quo, right? But I'm thinking about how liberalism probably is the actual status quo on the Taurus side of just like kind of wanting to keep capitalism the way that it is so that people benefit from it in free markets and, small businesses and this and that. Just like back to normal with COVID and everything else, like business as usual. And then in a way, you could say the Republicans, maybe Leo, maybe Scorpio, in whatever sense that they're the ones actually disrupting and escalating as far as like rolling back civil liberties and all that kind of stuff goes. So that could be one way that we've misinterpreted the astrology to where we have another Donald Trump presidency, despite thinking that, Saturn was going to save us. But at the end of the day, remember when I said like going back to normal is still not what's best in terms of liberation. Going back to normal still means class war, still means class disparities, and still means like affluent liberal people can still like have class over other people and whatever else. So there's still that piece of it where it's like, yeah, maybe the Democrats aren't overtly Nazis, but if they're willing to sit up and kiki with that man on at Jimmy Carter's funeral and then attend his inauguration and just hand him the keys on January 6th as if he didn't incite a riot and everything else that he's done that was illegal, that he's been tried and found and convicted guilty of, then why they just let him come in and they're just like, haha, shaking hands. And then Joe Biden wants to decide on his way out, like to announce that, oh, this country, an oligarchy is taking shape in this country and blah, 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 blah. Like, bitch, I remember when I first learned the term oligarchy, either in high school or college, and being like, oh, that's what we got going on here, isn't it? Like, I feel like that's not a new thing to suspect that the American government is closer to an oligarchy than it is a democracy. But now all of a sudden that Joe Biden says it, now everybody wants to go and search and be like, oh my gosh, an oligarchy is taking shape under Trump. Like, no, it's been that way. It's been that way. So that's the part where I feel like, am I crazy? Like, did I miss something? Did I misunderstand something? But no, it's been this way. So that's why I'm like, unfortunately, one of the people who does say the right and the left are the same, because at the end of the day, they are coworkers. They're coworkers. They're working together, whether they want to or not. You know those coworkers you have that you don't necessarily like, that are pains in the ass, that maybe like don't do very good things for your whole entire organization, but you still have to work with them. That's them with this Trump administration. And I think maybe maybe to some extent they don't agree with how he does things, how he just is overtly like working with Elon, who's doing Nazi salutes at their rallies and whatever the fuck. Like, I'm sure they don't like that because it's a little too on the nose. But mind you, they had however many months they had, a year and a half to stop a genocide, and did not. All they had to do, just like they did in 2021, was call Netanyahu and say, hey, knock it off. Stop. That's enough. And didn't. And then they waited until Trump is about to be in office to let Trump go over there with whatever his real estate buddy is from Mar-a-Lago and to talk to Netanyahu on a Sunday or on a Saturday, one of those, on a time where Jewish people don't work, and was like, hey, stop it. And then he stopped. Granted, they will come back and they will initiate whatever they're trying to do and take the West Bank and this and that. So it's like temporary pause while Israel basically regroups. But these are the things, whenever we're talking about things are not what they seem, me personally, my opinion is, don't let the Democrats fool you into thinking that they're on your side. They're obviously not. They've done nothing. They've left us. You want to talk about Capricorn and neglect? They've left us. They've hung us out to dry. Basically, they're going to pretend to do all that they can on their side, but they're not doing shit. So I didn't see anything that y'all were saying. Hold on. Let me scroll down and see what y'all are saying. That was my soapbox. I step off the soapbox, but yes. Okay. I'm gonna start from the bottom. Dems make me think of the safer abusive parent. Yes, exactly. The abusive parent who just let whoever the other parent was beat your ass and then sat there and didn't do anything about it because either they too were scared or they agreed with it. Like, Just because they're not the ones who are laying the hand down on you doesn't mean that they aren't also abusive. They definitely lied and gaslit us many times over the years. Every day I find more reasons to hate Obama. Exactly, that as well. Obama may have done some things that benefited us, or I would say pacified us, because I like to use that word. But he was also with the drone strikes. Okay, he was also with the drone strikes. During undergrad, I had a classmate that was a military contractor, and when he would ask the professor for time off, I'd tune in and it clicked that, oh, this is a huge business cash grab, politics be damned. Exactly. You knew what he was doing, exhibiting forgiveness. Yes. I think Democrats love that man, honestly. And you know what? Even if they don't love him, they like the fact that like and this is not me saying Trump isn't evil. Obviously, he's very depraved man. Very depraved man. But they like the fact that him and Elon and whoever else are like so loud, especially Trump having Leo rising with Mars there, right? Him being in the spotlight constantly overshadows everything that everybody behind him is doing because everyone's paying attention to him being absolutely outrageous all the time. And it's like, once you realize that the man craves attention, I'm not going to diagnose that man, but craves attention, loves praise, loves people kissing his feet and sucking his dick, like that man loves attention, will do anything for attention, including really bad shit, including being the figurehead and I don't know, symbolic leader of really nefarious shit happening in the background. He doesn't care as long as he gets something out of it, whether that's his culty base or whatever side deals he's making with all of these other people around the world, or even if it's just the notoriety of being somebody who is a strong businessman and leader and daddy and whatever else these people call him. Like, that's enough for him. Always been enough for him. And Democrats love the fact, I'm sure Republicans too love the fact that he takes up so much of everybody's attention that they can kind of do whatever they want behind the scenes because people are mostly paying attention to what he's doing and blaming it on him directly when it's really not even him. Like, he doesn't even really care, I think, doesn't even really care about America for real. As far as him like being Hitlerian in that nationalistic sense, I don't even know if I believe that he really cares that much. I think Trump cares about Trump, and Trump cares about anybody who's willing to kiss his ass. And everybody else can kind of do whatever they're doing in the background and get away with a whole bunch of stuff. Like, somebody made a really good point that with TikTok, like, TikTok probably wasn't going to get purchased by Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, but would probably get purchased by Larry Ellison, who is I think the CEO. Is he the CEO? Or some other billionaire guy, silent billionaire guy that most people don't know of, who runs Oracle, I believe. And Oracle is the technological system or whatever that houses all of the data and information for TikTok. Something like that. I look into Larry Ellison and Oracle. They think it might get sold to him, and then they can craft it into more state-run media or whatever. But there's a bunch of things going on. Okay, I don't have all of the information. I'm just doing my little Gemini thing of peeping shit left and right here and there. But yeah, as long as Trump is being Trump, it makes everybody else look better by comparison. The whole lesser of two evils thing. Never fall for that shit again. Never fall for that. I don't care what anybody tells you. Do not let them tell you, because why are we voting between evils? And I know this all sounds very simple, but like we're past the point where that excuse is gonna fly. Okay, I forgot I'm only here until I have to go to work. So let me. There's so much to do. I wish I had 2 hours, but I don't. What are y'all saying? Eclipse season versus bird flu, yes. H5N9 was just detected in California. Yeah, California is kind of going through it right now in so many different ways. I'm so sorry, y'all. So much of what is planned will be so unpopular. I also wonder if the origins of COVID thing is tied to Pisces too. The CIA conveniently saying last week that it was discovered in a lab and China feels very xenophobic. Yeah, the lab leak thing, I don't know where I personally stand on the lab leak thing. But because I've heard there's so much, like, I would say peak gaslighting and Pisces confusion is definitely like the origins of COVID. I just don't know, because on the one hand, like, it's very coincidental to say that it leaked from the lab in Wuhan and to say that it started there. And kind of, I think they did a similar thing with the Spanish flu, pinned it on Spain because Spain actually had the technology to track it first or whatever, but it actually originated, I think, in the US, if not somewhere else. So, I mean, a whole bunch of different things with that. But at the same time, I've also heard like the US being the people funding the research, gain of function research, and all that other stuff too. So I don't know. I stay out of that argument at this point. Um, because there's so many different ways that they can manipulate that information to pin it on China, which is very advantageous for them, since China is basically the people next competing for world power, or like who have the manufacturing power and industry to kind of take over as a leading power over the US. And if you've noticed, and that was another thing I kind of wanted to talk about, but don't have enough information just yet. But even like open source, there's a new open source AI called DeepSeek that just came out of China as well, that apparently is way better and way cheaper to run than OpenAI, I think, or whatever it is that runs ChatGPT in the US. So that's a new thing that's apparently supposed to make the tech AI bubble pop. More on that later. Another thing that just kind of dropped today. So there's so much going on, you guys. We just don't have enough time to talk about all the things today, but I'll probably have to do another live this week once I gather more thoughts. But yeah, the xenophobia used in COVID is going to be the same flavor of xenophobia used to be used with bird flu infections happening in undocumented people and incarcerated people. This, I think, is T for sure, because some of the first infections, one of the reasons I'm linking bird flu to Pisces transits is because last year at the Pisces eclipse, the like total visible eclipse that we could all go out and see, that was last March in Pisces during a Mercury retrograde between Pisces, and it stationed retrograde in Aries. So Mercury was in Aries at the time that the first documented, I think, dairy farm worker had bird flu. It was either that or they were first. That was when the outbreaks first started. I can't remember what it was, but something with the Pisces eclipse last year directly tied to bird flu, and I've been kind of paying attention to that ever since, which is why I think it's a Pisces thing. But yes, I definitely think this, and there's more to say about this whole mass deportation thing too, and all the conspiracies around that. But yeah, things to pay attention to for sure. I have a funny feeling we might have lockdowns when Saturn moves into Pisces. That would be very soon. That would be very soon if it does. Um, okay, let me see. The Dims were sneaky and complicit. Yes. People believe they're helpless and powerless. Like, please. Biden admin happily transitioned power over to him. They did nothing. Joe Biden will always be the dude who brought us Clarence Thomas and trashed Anita Hill, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, they were kikiing at Jimmy Carter's funeral. All of them. This is like a history group. I learned so much here. I didn't know Obama did that. He did a lot. I can't remember where his drone strike situation was, but was it in Syria? I don't know. Somewhere he had a bunch of drone strikes going on, and even though he's the one, I think, who got people out of Afghanistan finally, he was still doing other shit. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Someone made a point that the Dems are now using the word oligarchy instead of fascism, specifically AOC. AOC is so confusing to me, which I think is the point. Like, she really be given up, because it's like, on the one hand, she's very much telling you exactly like what the vibes are, but then there's a way that she acts like she kind of tries to distance herself from it. Like, I'm trying to fight against these things. I'm trying to do this and that. And it's like, sure, I don't know. I don't know about her sometimes, but this is also T, using oligarchy instead of fascism. Absolutely. We said that one earlier. Blah blah blah. Okay. Politics is a grift. It's an avenue to solidify private business aspirations. Yes, exactly. NVDA stock is tanking with the DeepSeek stuff. Yes. So it was Syria. Okay. Yeah. I think she's an op. AOC. I would like to like her, but I just hard to trust politicians. Okay, I have about 10 minutes left. What do I need to tell y'all that I haven't told you already? Things to note about Venus retrograde. So Venus will retrograde. Okay, Venus retrograde dates and degrees. So starting today, Venus retrograde effectively like we're in the retrograde shadow because it's going to station direct at 0 degrees. It's at 0 degrees now, if not in a couple of hours. And it will enter Aries on May 31st. So Venus is going to station retrograde at 16 degrees Pisces on March 1st. And then it's going to station direct at 0 degrees Pisces on April 12th. And then the shadow period, the post shadow after the retrograde, ends on May 15th, 16th, early morning, May 16th, and that's at 16 degrees. It'll pass Pisces at 16 degrees. So something interesting about this Pisces retrograde, this Venus in Pisces retrograde, is that Jupiter will be in Taurus all the way through the direct station. And then Jupiter will be in Gemini by the time that Pisces moves through the shadow period, the last shadow period. So we'll have Jupiter in Taurus until May 14th, 2025. So that's important because oh dang, I really needed to talk about this. I actually need to think about this more anyway, so we'll talk about it next time. But Venus in Pisces and Jupiter in Taurus, they have a sextile with reception. So that means Venus is in Jupiter's sign and Jupiter is in Venus's sign. You could also add in that Venus is exalted in Pisces too, which just gives a little extra oomph to this whole thing. So the relationship between Venus and Jupiter right now is really strong. They're really interlinked. And like I said, I think a lot of that is the emotional manipulation, along with something related to docility and acceptance, or docility and approval, that I haven't quite mapped out yet. So I'm going to think about that more and I'll report back to y'all later on what that relationship is actually about. But there's a lot to be said by when I talk about emotional manipulation. This isn't like Jupiter and Pisces, this isn't Venus and Pisces always, but it is kind of like a Venus and water sign thing, just because Venus does manipulate in the most neutral sense as far as whenever it comes to connection relationships and just like the ways that our nervous systems affect other people's nervous systems and our actions affect other people's body and feelings and stuff like that. So there is something to be said for the emotional manipulation and gaslighting during this time, and then the confusion between all of us trying to make sense of what's going on. So being in relationship with people who see things the way that you see it, not necessarily a good or bad thing, because that can go either way. Sometimes that can go so far as like culty stuff where you're not letting in any new information and you're skeptical of all new information. But then it can also go in the other direction where you are feeling like seen and supported and safe in your relationships because you're with like-minded people. So I would just be wary of that. Be skeptical, healthy skepticism of any groups that you get involved in, but also, loose coalition versus culty. People who at least have people who are not cheering on mass deportations. Okay, people who are not like happy with things that are going on, probably you're better off there than you are trying to convince people who have decided that mass deportations are a good thing and they don't care if they have to suffer in the process. So, there's that. What else? Oh, the other thing that we'll talk about next week is that Jupiter is basically stationary direct now. So Jupiter retrograde is almost over. Jupiter retrograde officially ends next Tuesday, where Jupiter is stationing direct at 17 degrees Taurus. It's been at 17 degrees Taurus for, I think, the last couple of weeks. So that's also a big part of this, a big part of everything that's going on right now. And this idea of what was business as usual and what was the status quo really did shift a lot during this Jupiter retrograde. So we'll reflect on that again, figure out what the hell is going on. And then, yeah, like I said, Jupiter will enter Gemini May 14th, and Mercury will be in Aries while Jupiter is in Gemini. Because that'll be after the Mercury retrograde in Pisces, which we'll also have to talk about soon. So much going on. Okay, last thing, some dates. I'm running out of time. So sorry that this was not as in-depth as I wanted it to be, but this is what I got for y'all today. Eclipse season begins today, like I said, and effectively ends whenever Venus leaves Pisces, because Venus is going to spend the most time in Pisces other than Saturn entering Pisces eventually. But Venus will stay, I think, even longer than the nodes. So this Venus transit basically marks eclipse season. And even though there's not an eclipse in Pisces, or yes, there is. There's an eclipse in Pisces. I was going to say, even though there's not an eclipse in Virgo, there is an eclipse in Leo. So Venus, dates to look at for this eclipse season. And we're going to all experiment this together because I don't know how this is going to turn out either. Venus will join the North Node in Pisces on February 1st at 3 degrees Pisces. Then Mercury will hit 3 degrees Pisces with the North Node at the same time that Venus stations retrograde, basically. So March 1st. And then the Sun will join the North Node in Pisces on March 17th. And then the Pisces eclipse is at 14 degrees on March 29th, which is the same day that Saturn enters Pisces. So March 29th is a big day. Just mark that in your calendar. March 29th, big day. In the meantime, we do have one Leo eclipse at 29 degrees Leo, our first of the Leo and Aquarius eclipses. That will be on March 14th. We'll talk about that later as well. So you could say, not really. I was going to say you could kind of say that eclipse season starts when the sun enters Aquarius, and maybe you can. I don't see why not. But eclipse season basically starts today, so we're in eclipse season regardless. But the sun transiting Aquarius will also be more or less relevant, even though the nodes won't switch over just yet. The nodes will still be in Virgo and Pisces through most of March. So, yeah. Okay. I have about 2 minutes left. Any questions? Any questions from anybody? This was all over the place, but I have a limited amount of time, so I apologize for that. I had plans for a more cohesive message, but what came out is what came out, and I'm cool with that. But so much Pisces. The main thing I wanted to give you was dates for all of this Pisces shit, because Pisces has been the secret player since 2019, and we slept on her a little bit, which is exactly what she wants. She wants to fly under the radar. But I'm on to you, girly. And I do think Venus is doing a lot. She's very wild for this. She, for whatever reason, and I do think it's very interesting that it's Venus specifically while Jupiter is in Taurus, because it really says a lot about our relationships, like with each other, and our our ability to like organize around information and to like act on information, but also honestly us trying to fly under the radar as well. Like we can't be too loud. I know I'm on here broadcasting live, but like even me, like even I feel like I'm taking myself out of the public eye slowly. I would recommend you do the same as much as you can. I'll still be on here doing lives every Monday, but a lot of like my posts, I'm going to move to my Patreon. I'm just going to throw the links, I think, on my Patreon and then make it unlisted on YouTube. So you can't find it on YouTube. You have to go through my Patreon, but I haven't started doing that yet. I'll let y'all know. So if you haven't subscribed, at least as a free member to my Patreon, I recommend doing that because I got to keep myself safe if I want to keep talking to y'all. But I do still want to stay on YouTube somehow. So I don't know. I need to edit my videos so that they are shorter and less of me directly telling on myself. But I want to have shorter videos on my channel and then the longer uncut videos on my Patreon. So if you want the full raw lives, join my Patreon. Please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already so that you can actually tune in to the lives as they're happening and get your input in. And then yeah, patreon.com/mixmercury. That's such a long undertaking, but yeah. I've said that Jupiter causes more issues than Saturn, but people stay bashing Saturn. And you know what? It's true. It's true, although I do have to say I'm very nervous for whatever Saturn in Pisces is about to do. Saturn is also very busy right now. I didn't talk about it very much just because, but maybe next week. There's just so much to talk about at once, you guys. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about and not enough time and mental resources, but we will get through it. Okay? Okay, besties. I love y'all. I have to go to work now. I hope y'all have a great day. Saturn is also a pain. I'm a Saturn rule person. Sorry, Saturn's also a pain, but Jupiter is really the one that is the chaotic busybody. That does a lot. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Watch this back, write down all of these dates, mark them in your calendars, whatever you got to do. Pay attention, not just to the dates, but to the weeks surrounding the dates as well. So basically keep your eyes open from now through March and beyond, but especially now through May and beyond, but especially now through May, because this is the time where everything is not what it seems and you can't believe everything that you hear. So keep that in mind. Okay, I love y'all. Have a wonderful day. Cue outro music.